Welcome back in, everybody. Another edition here of the Auburn Undercover podcast on the 24/7 Sports Network. Nathan King here with our publisher, Ronnie Sanders. Former Auburn defensive coordinator, Ellis Johnson, is with us today for a very special edition of the podcast. Phillip Marshall is here as well, and wanted to do a show remembering the life of Bill Oliver, who passed away this week. And Ronnie and Ellis and Phillip, I know you guys have a lot of great stories you're looking forward to sharing. So I'll turn it over to you guys. But Ronnie, I know this was something important to y'all because, I mean, shoot, I've probably heard you talk about Bill Oliver more than anybody else, and I guess just talk about what his legacy means to you as we get into a show today to remember what he meant both for Auburn and Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, Ellis, you probably knew him a lot better than I did, but we spent a lot of time together at Auburn, and I've still got a couple of pictures with him. I remember one in particular at the '96 Independence Bowl. We're standing down there, and we're playing Army in the was it 90? It was 97, I guess. Was it 96? It was 96.
96.
And Army shoots the cannon off, and I'm looked over there, and Trickett jumped about 6 feet off the ground. But brother was special. Ellis, talk a little bit about your relationship.
Yeah, well, it's very unique because not only were we really, really good buddies for a while, at one point, I mean, he was probably one of my most important mentors. And I learned a lot from him. Being caught in the middle of him and Mike Dubose in a staff meeting, you'd have to be asleep not to learn football. Those two guys were unbelievable. And I tried to just be a sponge when I was in there. But there were some fun times. We were actually roommates. I don't know, these coaches now would laugh about it, but we actually had two in a room on pre-night, at the hotel before the games. And a lot of times on the road, they told us, you can't, get one room for both of them. But when we were going with the team, they put two of us in a room, and brother and I were roommates those 4 years. I'm pretty sure I know we were at least two of the three. So I was around him in a lot of ways and personal. First time I actually met him was when he was coaching up at Clemson. I was good buddies with Tommy West and another coach on the staff, Les Herring. And I'd go over there and talk football quite a bit. And I got to see Bill then and started talking football with him. And that's when I started kind of learning from him. And he's how I got to Alabama. Coach Stallings obviously did the hiring. But there were two or three that wanted to bring back a guy that had been with them earlier at Alabama, and brother wanted me. And so he gave me the opportunity to come in and meet Coach Stallings, and thank God it worked out.
Phillip, jump in a little bit and talk about your relationship.
Yeah, as we were talking before, I was when brother went to Auburn, I guess in 1966 from Marshall County High School, and I started in this business in 1969, and I knew him then, and he just was always very welcoming and very nice to me, even though I wasn't anybody. But and then after the 1970 season, he left and went to Alabama. And at that time, I covered Alabama and Auburn both. And so I knew him while he was there. And then he left and went to Chattanooga, and I talked to him on the phone every now and then, and to Clemson. And then back to Alabama. And then I got a call from somebody very close to him in January of 1996, I guess, and said, "Hey, I thought you'd want to know, brother's about to go to Auburn again." I said, "No." I said, "Yeah, he's going because Terry had fired Wayne Hall, and he was just always very enamored with brother's defenses, and so sure enough, he came back to Auburn, and then and that's really where he and I probably spent more time together than any other time. And I loved just sitting in his office and talking to him about football, and other stuff. And I did a big long story on him one time, and I went to Epps, Alabama, which is where he grew up, and his sister was still there. And had lunch with her, visited with her, just drove around in Epps, Alabama, which didn't take long, and just asking people if they remembered him. Oh yeah, they were proud of him, and then when he became the interim head coach, he told me then the first time he had ever told me, he said, there was no bigger Auburn fan than my daddy. And I was not aware of that until then. And when he got to be the interim head coach, he told me, he said, I thought about my daddy, and I thought about how proud he would be for me to be the head coach here. And he really wanted that team was lost before he took over, but he injected energy that was missing, and the players loved playing for him, and they wanted him to be the head coach. A lot of fans wanted him to be the head coach, and he told me, I guess his last morning on the job, I was in his office, and he said, I think I'm going to get the job. And I said, really? Because I didn't think he was going to get a job. And he said, yeah, well, I'm told, I think it's about done. And later that day, he left to go to lunch and never came back. So I don't know who told him, but they were going to hire Tommy Tuberville. And it disappointed me from a personal standpoint, just because like I said, he and I had gotten to be, it's not like we hung out together, but we'd gotten to be, we'd known each other for, for 50 years almost now. But, and he would talk to me about most anything. And from a selfish standpoint, if I asked him a question, he would answer it. And, but mostly he was just a fascinating human being, just to, that unique accent, and he was confident now, because he was convinced that not only was he a great defensive coordinator, but if he chose to be, he would be a great offensive coordinator too. And maybe he would have been, I don't know, but I know so many coaches. Ellis, you talk about him being a mentor for you. Will Muschamp, so many coaches who say that about him, and how much they learn from him. And he was a defensive genius. There's no question about it. Of course,
I got to build on two things that Phillip brought up. Brother told me one time, he said he wanted to go to Auburn. He said, I didn't get a scholarship. And he came to Alabama on a baseball scholarship. Coach, that was back when Coach Bryant was using wrestling and baseball and wherever else he could put them. And then there was something funny he told me about that. It was like he didn't even get to play his first year. And then the second year, Coach told us that you got to go over and play some baseball, or we're going to get in trouble, or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but that's how he got to Alabama. So he was always had a little Auburn in his heart, and his dad, like I said, his dad loved the school. The second thing was, a lot of folks don't know this, but when that thing was going down, where brother was leaving Alabama to go to Auburn, we talked about every other week. And a lot of folks don't know, a lot of that was about him getting his retirement set up. He thought that someone at Alabama was going to help him purchase previous service year, that he had not kept his money in there. And it was a pretty good little chunk of money. People would laugh at it now with what coaches are making. But back then it was a pretty little chunk. And somebody kind of reneged or said, I don't think we're going to be able to do it. And then Terry was able to get somebody at Auburn to do it. But what folks don't know is brother and I were on the phone, and I was at Clemson then. And I had left Alabama to go to Clemson. I think I was in the third year. And I was going as a defensive coordinator. He was going as the assistant head coach. And he had it worked out with Terry that I would get the coordinator salary. They were going to pay brother media money, or whatever you want to call it. They were going to pay him $10.99 money. And I was all set to go. And then but I had just been named defensive coordinator. I went over as an outside linebacker coach, but I was moved to defensive coordinator. And I just got cold feet at the end. I thought if I'd leave and I go back and work with Brother, they're going to know it's Brother's defense. And so I felt like I'd be backing up a little bit. And I told him I couldn't go. And I really felt terrible about that. We've still had a great relationship over the years. But I think
I didn't know that. That's new to me.
yeah, I think it hurt him a little bit. And Terry was the one that was so accommodating. I used to play golf with Terry and Frank Bromberg all the time when he was still at Sanford. He got to be pretty close friends with him. And he wanted both of us to come. But I just felt like at the very end it wouldn't be a smart move for me.
Probably not, because like you said, you would have had the title, but he would have been viewed as the guy.
Yeah.
And then, but he is, he loved to have a good time. He loved to, but he was great with people. And like I said, one of my favorite coaches I covered, and one of the definitely more memorable coaches I covered in my time. And always, even when I was, of course, I think it said he was 85 when he died. Well, he's 10 years older than I am. We weren't that close together, but we were close. We were both, when I first knew him, we were both, I was really young and he was pretty young.
One of the other stories I used to love, Auburn people get a kick out of this, but, Bill and Pat Dye were very close when they were on staff with Coach Bryant.
Mm-hmm.
And they're both big turkey hunters. And I guess had a lot of other things in common, but they would go turkey hunting in the morning before the staff meetings. And the two of them would come walking in Coach Bryant's staff meetings and the camo sitting over there. And he said, Coach never really told him that he minded it or anything. And I guess when you got two coaches like that, it's not going to bother you what they got on. But they used to come in from turkey hunting and walk into the staff meeting, sit down, they'd have the camo
on. Yeah, it's it was, and Ellis, I go back to when you were at Auburn, and I really appreciated how kind you were to me and how available you were. And it's just not like that anymore. I guess all these coaches got to making too much money. They got paranoid.
I think it might be that, but I think what's happened is just so much social media and even what we're doing now. And I don't know. I think some of them get kind of isolated. They think they're going to be able to control the message by only speaking to certain people or something. I don't understand it. But and I was never in the middle of it to a great degree until I was later in life. So I was mature, is what I'm saying, when I had to do some of those kind of things, and it just never did bother me. The only thing that ever bothered me about a media person if what they said wasn't true. I don't give a damn how much criticism I got or how bad they talked about it being. If it was true, then hell, what am I supposed to do? Get my feelings hurt? It was my fault. So I just never had a problem with it,
One thing you both brought up was how big a mentor Brother was to the young coaches. He was also a mentor to players and other people around the building. I know, I was 19, 20, 21 years old, and his office door was always open. I'd go in there and sit down, and we'd talk and hang out, and he'd walk out on the practice field and put his arm around me, and I always thought a lot of him. He was always very gregarious and fun to be around.
Yep.
Ellis, tell us some more stories. What was it like hanging out with him?
If I talk, I could talk about football, that side of him. I could talk about just some good memories, or talk about some funny stories. Don't let me get started. We'll have to cut the thing off. I still won't be through. But I think one of the best memories I had, just kind of looking back, when people are gone, you start to miss them more. And we had a thing when we grade the film on Sunday mornings. I think we met with the team that afternoon. I don't even remember. But once we got it all graded and everything, Woody McCorvey and brother and I would always go eat lunch together. That was no question. The three of us were going to get something to eat and just talk about the game or whatever else. Of course, Woody was on the other side of the ball. And, so it was just talk ball or whatever, talk about the previous game or who we're getting ready to play. But that was like you could write that and take it to the bank. I think probably one of the things a lot of folks talk about, brother, they talk about his relationship with Spurrier. And it really was a close relationship. They never worked together, but it started when brother moved to the USFL. And he may have been friends with him before then. In fact, I know he was. But he also, he was at the Showboats, and Steve was still coaching in Tampa. And so they were knocking heads for a year or two maybe before the league folded. Then brother goes to Clemson, and the next year Steve ends up at Duke. And of course he did things at Duke that nobody ever done before. And they actually had a big game. Clemson and Duke had a big game. And Clemson was favored, but Duke was having a good season that year. And they ended up beating Clemson. And they got I think they tied for the conference title.
Yeah, they did.
I don't remember the year. It'd be like 88 or 89 or something. I don't know.
Well, I think it was 89, I believe, because Spurrier went to Florida in 90.
Yeah.
And I think
then
it
it comes
was last year at Duke.
Then we get to Alabama, and brother is obsessed with it, and we can't figure out why. I mean, I'm like, what is this obsession with Spurrier? But it was a personal challenge.
Yeah.
And of course, we had a couple of knockdown dragouts with them. First year we got there, they were on a regular season schedule, and beat us bad right there in Birmingham or even in Tuscaloosa. Then 2 years later, of course, we play them for we go down to Florida. It got embarrassing performance down there. And then we turned around, of course, the next year we beat them in the championship game pretty bad. But in all those times, I mean, it was just a very intense thing for him. There was no other opponent that he, as far as the coach, that he really was intense about more so than Steve. But it was a professional respect, too, and they talked a lot of ball over the years. I think he actually brought brother down there after he retired and had him talk some football with him, bring some film and that kind of thing. So I'm over it. We were always talking about hoping to get coached with him. So I'm at Mississippi State. I don't get years. I mean, I can't even remember them. But Steve gets the Redskins job. Hell, I was on the phone so fast calling brother. I was convinced that we were going to Washington. And I didn't know Steve well enough. I mean, I'd maybe spoken to him before. But he kind of had brother on his mind. But I'm pretty sure the ownership told him, you can bring some of your buddies, but you got to get some NFL guys in here now. We're not wholesale bringing everybody from college football. And they made him keep the defense coordinator at the time, and I can't spit his name out, but he was a good one. Ended up with the Bengals, I think, as a head coach. What was his name? Marvin
Lewis.
Marvin Lewis. Yeah.
And he was a big help to Steve. But anyhow, it didn't happen. But I think I called brother before Steve called. Because I was hell, if you go now, I said, I'm you know where I'm at. I'm going too.
Brother's first year at Auburn, 1996. Well, I'll tell you how thin they were in the secondary. Do you remember safety named Brad Ware that played at Auburn, Ellis?
I remember the name.
Well, the day before two-a-days, he said, I don't want to do this, and went home. Stayed at home all the way through two-a-days. And on Sunday of game week, he comes back and he started the game. I told brother, I said, that's the smartest guy I've ever seen. He misses all the two-a-days and then he starts the first game. He misses all the hard part. He said, you got to do what you got to do. But that's the year Florida won the national championship. And they scored 50-plus points on LSU, on Georgia, And then they played Auburn in Gainesville, and they won. I want to say it was 56-10. But brother told me, he said during pregame warm-ups, one of the Florida players said to him, said that had played against him when he was at Alabama, and said to him, he said, "Coach," said, "you don't have those same kind of players now you had then, do you?" And brother said, "Well, no, but we're gonna get after you." It was 7-7, and then it just went, then the dam broke, and it was he was it's hard for me. When I was writing the column about him yesterday, I'm trying to describe him, and I had a hard time doing it. I mean, he's a really good guy, a really caring guy, at the same time a really confident guy, and but even Ellis, I'm sure you know from your coaching career, if your players aren't good enough, it doesn't much matter how good a coach you are.
That's right. I tell you, y'all mentioned the fact that everybody talks about he's a genius. He's a genius. He's a genius, and that's one thing. He and Coach Spurrier had something in common. When you're trying to play against them or even learning from them, and you're getting a lot of football, and you're seeing a lot of football and all that, and you get this idea that they're both real complex. Well, they know a lot of football, but if you saw some of our game plans when we were at Alabama, now we had some players, so we didn't have to do a lot. But if you saw some of our game plans, you would think it was Sunday night when we just started writing it down. I mean, we'd go into games, guys, and I'm telling you, we may have had 10 calls on the whole damn sheet. And then probably didn't use but 6 of them. But there were things within there that were key.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, like we'd play a team, and they'd run a certain style of offense, and we'd just crush it, shut them out. And we'd start into the next opponent, and they'd be very similar in scheme and personnel and things, not totally like opposite, but it'd be pretty similar. And I'd say, "You just going to pull this one back out?" And he said, "No, it might look a little bit like it, but we've got to change some things." And he was always going to do something a little different because, he just felt like that other coach on the other side was going to have a plan for it. So the change might not be that radical. It might have been subtle, but it was genius. And then, working for Steve, it was always so damn hard to stop. And it was always kind of like he was lucky. He'd throw on a damn route, and you happened to be in the wrong coverage. Well, you didn't happen to be in the wrong coverage. He happened to know what coverage your ass was in. And that's why he ran the play. And I think, how does he do this? And then he could watch film, and he'd run through it. It'd be like watching TV. And I'm thinking, he's just bored in here. He's not even watching the damn thing. I'd be, run it back, writing it down. And he was photographic. But Steve didn't have a real complicated system.
No.
He had a lot in it for the right situations. And the genius was he could get you in that defense, or either he could tell when you were in that defense, because he would do a certain movement pre-snap, or he'd run a certain formation, or he would shift, or he'd do something. And he knew he wasn't watching his own team. If you look at some of the pre-snap motions that he had, they looked like somebody screwed up. They'd start over to the left, and they'd look like, they call it right. And the player would go jogging back over there like he didn't know where he was. It was intentional. He said, "Just start out over here." And while that kid's doing that, Steve's watching the safeties or a corner. He ain't watching his team. He's watching the defense and see what they do. And then boom, he shoots the play out there, or tells the quarterback, "Go ahead and run the same play." And brother was a lot like that. We didn't run a lot of defenses, but we changed a little something all the time. Always a little bit of a change and an adjustment and so forth.
It's funny you say that. He was Terry. I was texting with Terry Bowden yesterday when I heard the news, and Terry had also made a comment on the podcast. We had him on a couple of weeks ago, and he was yesterday. He texted me, so he said he said, I hate to hear that brother was a great football coach. But he also talked about during the podcast, he talked about what a great job the staff did, and brother in particular, during the 97 season. He said, because, we played Tennessee, lost in the championship game by 1 point, and they were a lot better than we were. And he gave the staff a lot of credit. Brother also brought in Pete Jenkins, who did an unbelievable job. Brother mentored
I got a text from Pete Jenkins yesterday.
What's that now?
I said, I got a text from Pete yesterday.
I texted him yesterday morning, and
he's telling me he'd been at Auburn and 2 other places in the last 3 weeks. And speaking of memorable characters, that's another one. Wonderful guy, though. Wonderful guy. But I think that things have changed so much, and my job's not as much fun as it once was, because I used to be able to establish real relationships with people. Ellis, brother, Joe Whitt, you name them. So many coaches, guys at Alabama, Jeff Rousey, great friend of mine, Neil Callaway, but Mike Dubose too, for that matter. But it's just not that way anymore. And everything's buttoned up, everything's locked up. I used to, at Auburn or Alabama, I would just go up to the coaches' offices, walk around. Somebody sitting in his office, I'd say, hey, you got a minute? And either he would say, yeah, sure, come in and sit down, or he'd say, no, not right now, I really don't. And that was fine. But if they saw me walking down the coach's office hall right now, then there'd be alarms going off. Somebody have a heart attack. And it's always amazed me, because that's just like closed practices. Heck, I don't know anything about what I'm seeing. I'm the last person anybody should worry about. But it was more fun in those days. The game is still great, but of course, Ellis, how would you like to be coaching now with players holding out and everything else?
I've told many people the NIL was long overdue. The problem they got is the damn portal, and
Right.
that's what's destroying programs and ruining kids, is they don't have any commitment. The money, no problem for me with the money. I think a lot of the coaches are overpaid. It's easy for me to say that now, but they're a little overpaid compared to what the kids have been getting for the last 50 years. I get that part. But that's only a few programs. When I say a few, there's like 200 and something college football programs, and there's only about 50, 60 of them have that kind of power. But not to get off on a tangent, the transfer is what's screwing it up. And they let that get out of hand. Probably didn't notice how bad it was, because they were caught up in the money thing, and it's all intermingled now, and that's what's causing it. The NIL's out of control. It needs some guardrails, but it needs to be in existence. What we got going on now is not NIL, though. Hell, it's collectives are just paying players. And if they ever put a cap on it or anything, what's going to happen is the schools are going to go back the way it was in the old days. They're going to be paying them under the table and cheating to give them that extra $500,000, because they're already going to be getting the same thing this guy's getting, and they're going to say, hell, I'm better than him. And they're going to pay him under the table. But anyhow, we're getting off on that. That's not about Bill Oliver. But you're right, it's changed a lot, Phillip. But I think cell phones have a lot to do with it. If you were walking around practice 35, 40 years ago, you wouldn't have a camera in your hand. And
Right.
Now everybody's walking down the sidewalks got a camera in their hand. And that's one thing that they worry about. Is I know he might go over to watch my son at Clemson, and one of those signs they've got there is no cell phones. If you got a cell phone out taking a picture or something, they get real suspicious. They wouldn't care if a parent was over there doing something, but that's what they worry about.
Ellis, how would brother manage in today's environment with NIL? I mean, I know he worked at Alabama, but in today's NIL portal environment,
he would have somebody else handle it. He'd say, take care of this son of a bitch for me. I ain't dealing with that. That's basically what we did. But
I had a big booster tell me, who shall remain nameless, when NIL first started. He said, well, this is going to be a problem. And I said, in what way? He said, well, he said, there's a lot of people in this state that do business with Auburn people and Alabama people. He said, you could convince them to give money when it was going to be paid behind the scenes and nobody knew who gave it. He said, but now they're going to be a little bit nervous about it, because if they give money to Auburn, then the Alabama people are going to stop doing business with them, or vice versa. But it's somebody told me when NIL first started, they said it's not going to be a big deal. It'll only impact a very small number of players. I said, you must be living in some kind of dream world if you think that's the case. There's a lot of rich people out there willing to pay a whole lot of money just to help their team win.
Well, if it was NIL, what happened is all the coaches saw it coming. It was going to be a terrible imbalance within their locker room, and it was going to start disgruntlements and problems in there. And kids don't blame other kids. They blame the damn coach. So if you're not getting what this kid's getting, you're up there at the coach saying, hey, how does he get that deal and I can't get that deal? And they just said, this is not going to work. We got to do some way to reward every kid. They all work just as hard out on the practice field, yada, yada, yada. Well, that's where this collective came in. Yeah. And then it goes to this step, then it goes to that step. And all along, they kick an NCAA in the teeth and won't let them help them regulate it. And then they get beat in court every time they try. So it's just a mess. And we could talk about it for 3 hours, but brother would not deal with it. I can tell you that right now. And he wouldn't care if the kid was getting a couple of million or a couple of hundred. He'd coach them the same way, and they'd probably play pretty damn well too. But he would not deal with all this mess of trying to counsel one out of leaving and all that. And there are a lot of coaches in that era, including me. I just would not be able to deal real well with the portal stuff.
Phillip, how big a deal was brother leaving Alabama coming to Auburn and the way that it went down and the environment, Gene Stallings and Terry Bowden, Buster Brown? And
well, going back, Coach Jordan was really hurt when brother went back to Alabama. He really was. Because, Coach Jordan had hired him out of high school. And so he was hurt by that. And the next go around, it was a huge story, obviously. But I don't remember, and my memory's not that good, Ronnie. I'm not young like you. But I don't remember it being anything controversial as much as just shocking. It was just shocking more than anything else, because Alabama was not that far removed from winning the national championship 3 years earlier, and I think a lot of people thought brother would be the next head coach at Alabama. And I heard, now brother didn't tell me this, so I don't know. I can't verify its veracity, but I heard that it was when he realized that wasn't likely to happen that he became even more open to listening to Auburn. And then, as Ellis said, the retirement thing, I think that was a big part of it too. And I think he was probably, because like I said, I'd known him all those years, and it wasn't until he was interim head coach that he told me that his daddy had been a big Auburn fan and that he would probably have gone to Auburn if he'd had an opportunity. I never knew that, and I don't think many people probably knew that. And so if they had, it might not been quite as shocking, because to me that probably made it a little more comfortable for him to be at Auburn.
Yeah, one thing that it didn't start over any kind of conflict or controversy, but what was going on, I told y'all earlier, I was in the middle of it because I was going for a while there. And I said, what's the problem? Why are you leaving? What's going on? Because I was at Clemson. And so some of what happened, if you remember what happened with Antonio Langham,
Right.
and then in trying to do the right thing or feeling like they were, it was mishandled according to the NCAA. And so Alabama ends up in a mess with that. And from there, it got to the point that he felt like that Hootie was the one who had told him, you'll be in line for it if y'all do a great job when coach is ready to go. And so brother always felt that. Well, he reached a point where he felt like that thing had gotten kind of turmoil with Hootie and the president. He just said, they'd lost the ability to do what they want to do. I'm having a hard time coming up with the right words, and I don't want to say something about there are people still alive and still at these places, I guess, but they didn't have the control they had at the time where we all came in the door. And so talking about the AD and the principal,
Right.
AD and the president. So it got to be real muddled about what the future was going to be. And he felt like it might not ever turn over. And he was frustrated. And then when he asked him about getting those previous years so he could retire, and Terry was able to do it. I know who connected them, but it was kind of a third-party conversation. And that was before the days of Jimmy Sexton, so he wasn't involved. But that's kind of what it was. It was a decision based on the fact that, hell, I can sit here and coach forever, but I'm going to end up with no job in 5 years and no retirement. And Auburn was offering him a very good situation in that respect. Come in, run the defense, good salary. We're going to take care of your past service in the state of Alabama. And when you retire in 4 or 5 years, you get full retirement, full state retirement. And that's pretty important to somebody when you're turning 60 years old.
Right.
So,
he also had a situation where the head coach was not going to bother him. The head coach was not going to
it was getting to be a little bit of conflict because there was a lot of turmoil in the building, and the only thing that was steady was the defense. Frankly, at that time, just a lot of things there. But anyhow, they didn't really get bitter with each other, but it was no love lost because nobody at Alabama would step up and get that taken care of. I'm talking about the retirement.
Right.
Had they done that, I don't know that he would have left. He might have. I don't know.
Was the relationship with Stallings an issue there?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It became an issue because of the fact that brother even considered leaving. It just broke down the communication lines. Now, they were very contentious at times when we were there. Even when we were winning big, because Gene considered himself a very good defensive coach, and quite often brother wouldn't do what he wanted him to do. And not intentionally, but what I'm saying is he put the plan together because he's going to call it. And they would have a lot of, disagreement over this, disagreement over that, but not to the point of where we had any kind of staff problem. Hell, everywhere I've worked, that's going on with any coach that I've ever worked with. There's going to be disagreements and stuff, but that's where it ended. Was this is football? This is where we're going to do it, okay? And if we're going to run that technique, okay, I'll yield to you. But if you think we're going to take this player, I'm making that decision. So there were things like that, that they sometimes butted heads, but it was never anything destructive or distracting. It was always just professional knowledge against professional knowledge. And, some decisions you're going to make, some you're not.
Oh, I've heard a lot of coaches tell me that game planning situations can get quite hostile sometimes.
Yeah,
They can.
When people, trying to settle on what you're going to do, and strong-willed guys, and Do you think Ronnie Sanders could have been a good coach, Ellis?
Probably. Hell, every time I'm on thing with him, he's got all the answers. I know one thing. He's been in and out of enough good programs. He's seen enough coaches screw things up. He would know what not to do.
No doubt about that. Hey, I've been fired 3 times, twice in the middle of the season, so I'm an expert at this.
Yeah, I've said a lot of times. Coaching is about the only profession where you can be as good as anybody or better than anybody at what you do. And if the head coach gets fired, you can get fired too. Yeah. It has nothing to do with performance.
You can also be terrible and continue to get. You can also be terrible and know the right people and continue to get jobs.
Yeah, I've been on a couple of stats 2 or 3 times. I'm trying to think. Once, let's see, 1, 2. Two I know. I'll probably leaving one out. Where I'm on the staff, and nobody came in and told me I was fired. They fired the head coach, and so I told my ex one time. I said, well, we didn't really get fired. The coach got fired. It's too bad. And it's just I think they're making a mistake. They said, "Did you lose your job or not?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "You got fired." I said. So Harbison and Charlie and I started saying we got traded. There you
go. Well, guys, I appreciate y'all joining us today.
Ellis, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you again. It's been a long time.
Great to see you and talk. And I wish it was about something different. But
yeah,
my brother-in-law texted me when he heard about it because he knew how close we were, and I said, "Yeah, he was a heck of a mentor and quite a character." And I would say those are about the main 2 things I could say. I could have talked about a lot of stuff here, the guys, but there's some of it better not said on a podcast.
there's no question
much less in the regular media.
Hey, I tell you, I'll tell one story, and then we'll. I'm not sure I should. It's not too bad though. We're out of practice one day, and brother may have been a genius, but he was also hard nosed. And we're out of practice one day, and one of the receivers goes up, catches a pass over DB's head, and DB didn't come up and do what he's supposed to do. And Ellis ran up to him, brother ran up to him, grabbed his face mask. He said, "Hey, listen, I want you to understand something." He said, "I know you didn't take him down like we've talked about because he's your teammate." He said, "But you need to understand something. If that's in a game, that's a hospital case." And he that's the way he coached. I mean, he was hard nosed. He got after those guys, and they loved playing for him. I mean, they believed in him, and they loved playing for him.
I'll give you, if we ought to end on a happy note, one of the funniest things that happened in one of our staff meetings was the very first year we were at Alabama, and all of you guys remember we were 0-3 at one time, and finally beat Vanderbilt. I think it was second game we go to Georgia, and we're playing. And Bill's subbing down there, and we're in the red zone. They're about to score or whatever. Well, hopefully not. And we're subbing late, and we got 12 men on the field. And George got a first down. Ended up punching it in on that thing instead of a field goal. And we ended up losing a close game. And about 2 weeks later, we're playing Vanderbilt. And brother, having played Coach Bryant, seen the wishbone every which way, but, he knew how to defend it. And we didn't have a staff meeting. We would meet defensively and offensively. And then each staff would have to come in and see Coach Stallings each morning, catch him up on the game plan, and he would debate or whatever. So anyhow, he's in there telling him the plan we're going to do with the wishbone. And he said, "Coach, you left here and went back to Texas A&M, but we had that wishbone here going pretty well, and we had to learn how to defend it." And he's drawing it up. And basically what it was like a zero look in the secondary, and the secondary rolling to the flow. And he said, we got to get that backside safety involved, or we're going to be down a man. They've got the load block. They've got the triple option. They're going to read this guy, take him out of the play. The only way you can stop it, Coach, you got to get that backside safety over there. It'll almost be like playing with 12 men. The coach was down there. He said, "Well, I hope it ain't like that son of a bitch that ran on the field late at Georgia." We left out of there, brother was cussing under his breath from the staff room all the way back to the offices. I didn't know whether to laugh or go find a place to be careful about losing. But it was the funniest thing, funnier now than it was then.
He was a character. Well, guys, I appreciate y'all being on today.
Hey, I appreciate it, and I hope I'm going to be there Tuesday, Ellis.
Well, I hope you can. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it. That's 6 hours.
I don't know for sure either. But he was. Of course, I understand he was not in good shape at all. Was he an assisted living, a nursing home, or?
Yeah, physically he wasn't doing that bad. Brother strong as a bull when he was.
Right.
He had a fall about, I don't know, within the last year, slowed him down a lot, and then he was having memories in and out.
Yeah,
I think some of that was a little bit of, when they start having that, sometimes they can get angry or change moods or whatever. I was never able to go see him after he went to Gunnersville and then down to Tuscaloosa. And then Bill had moved him down to Alex City recently to a better facility. And Brad lives down there now, his youngest. He's got a landscaping business down there. So he was able to run in and out of there 2 or 3 times a day. And he wasn't doing that bad physically. It was just, I think, either Alzheimer's or whatever was diagnosed with progressing.
My mother had dementia for years. And it's I used to wonder what's it like inside her head.
Yeah. Yeah, my oldest brother went through it about 4 or 5 years ago with him. It's y'all know it's a hard thing, but if the kids have been really good, and he's got a daughter over here in Charleston. She hardly was able to get over there and see him. Bill's in the Birmingham area, Bill Jr. So Brad was able to see him a lot when they moved him. So it wasn't a shock, I guess,
right.
But he's doing pretty doggone good for 85, and so it was a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah, I lost three grandparents to dementia, Alzheimer's. It's a brutal disease.
Yeah,
guys,
gentlemen, I appreciate it. I've enjoyed it, but Dag, especially talking to you, Ellis. And I want to thank you. Long time now, but I want to thank you for how kind you were to me in your time at Auburn.
I appreciate it.
You were great. You made my job easier, and it was really fun working with you.